As we record this, Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and I, Scott Ott, for Right Angle at BillWhittle.com, it seems unlikely that Charlie Gard is going to make it to his first birthday. Charlie was born with a terrible condition, and it doesn't really matter what the details of that are. His parents fought with the hospital, with the British National Health Service, and even with the European International Court to have the right to have him receive treatment from a doctor in the United States who said that he had an experimental procedure that might have a 10% chance of helping. The hospital fought him, the National Health Service fought him, the courts fought them, and now recently, as we record this, the parents themselves have given up hope because that U.S.-based doctor has examined the child and said there is not a chance that Charlie can be helped by this procedure at this point. Last I heard, they wanted to see if they could take Charlie home so that he could die peacefully with his parents at home. This story has gone around the world. It has resulted in an outpouring of love and support. It has resulted in an outpouring of money from people who are willing to pay to have the treatment done on this infant. And it has also resulted in a huge amount of controversy. In fact, there was a writer in Salon said just this week that that American conservatives took up the cause of Charlie Gard so that they could appear compassionate and distract attention from the fact that their current efforts to cut Medicaid would deprive children like Charlie of medical care. Most folks who are watching this probably know more than I do about the Charlie Gard case. I've only tuned into it recently, but there was something in particular that struck me about it, and I'd like to get into that a little bit today. Stephen Green, I want to stipulate a few things for you before you answer this question.
Okay.
Let's stipulate that the treatment would have been fruitless, hopeless, at any point, even 5 months ago when the parents first asked for it. Let's stipulate that, in fact, as some have alleged, the doctor was a profiteer or some sort of a scam artist who was taking advantage of their desperate situation, if not to explicitly make money, but at least to draw attention to himself. Let's stipulate that getting this treatment would have caused additional pain for Charlie Gard, and let's even stipulate that it would not have worked. Didn't the hospital and the National Health Service and the International Court do the right thing by protecting the child against the will of his parents?
I agree to stipulate everything that you just said, and I'm glad you gave me this question because it's really the one I wanted to answer. I'm pretty sure medically there was at no point any hope for Charlie, and I'm not sure that I would have made the same decision as a parent. You know, I have two young boys. That said, this was a brutal exercise in the coercive power of the state to put the guards and the rest of the British public in their place. Because let's talk about what single payer is. Single payer means single decider. You don't get to decide. You don't get to decide. The state gets to decide. Now, as a parent, you have, aside from abuse, almost unlimited power of discretion regarding the care and nurture and raising and medical treatment of your children, because they are your children. They are your responsibility. You brought them into this world. They are yours to cherish in the way you find fit. Back when Charlie might have had a chance, the hospital said no. Back when Charlie might have had a chance, the court said no. The European Court of Human Rights, get that Orwellian name through your head, told parents who had raised over $1 million. They'd raised $1 million. This was not going to cost the National Health Service one penny. They'd raised the money. And the European Court of Human Rights told them no. So this wasn't about protecting Charlie Gard. This wasn't about making better decisions than his distraught parents were making. This was a brutal and public display of the power of the state to compel its will, to force its will on its subjects, on its serfs. I'm afraid that after this, there's no such thing as citizenship in Europe anymore. You are now serfs of the state.
And Stephen, you just pointed out the interesting thing. You referred to it as single payer, but they didn't need anybody to pay. They didn't need the state to pay, and yet still the state, through the hospital, controlled.
Yes, that is the telling detail. That's how you know this wasn't about saving the treasury money. It wasn't about protecting Charlie, because his brain is so gone he can't feel anything. So this was an exercise in state power, in putting the guards and the British public as a whole in their place. They don't get to decide.
Now, Bill Whittle, back here in the United States, advocates of the Affordable Care Act claim that some 45,000 people per year died from lack of health insurance before Obamacare, and that Republicans aren't really pro-life if they want to take us back to those days when your life was in the hands of a greedy corporation who could deny you care simply because you couldn't pay. Don't they have a point, Bill?
First of all, I am not aware of the fact that people were suddenly dying without any health care, and then this abomination was rammed through the Congress and signed by the president, at which point fatalities dropped to zero as a result of lack of health care. So let's just get that ridiculous assertion out of the way. If you make the health care so expensive that people need insurance so that they can pay their insurance, you've actually done more harm to more people than anything that they possibly had before. And let's just put one more final nail into the coffin of this Salon writer, who basically is saying,
Marcotte, by the way, and she is as evil as she is insane.
Imagine my surprise.
Yeah.
The idea that prior to Obamacare, or certainly today, because basically Obamacare, they're trumpeting the Affordable Health Care Act. All the Affordable Health Care Act did was it forced me to buy insurance from a private company. That's all it did. It wasn't single payer, so please, just stop. But for her specifically, the idea that somebody goes into a hospital or sees a doctor and they say, you've got leukemia. Where's your health insurance? I don't have any. Well, then go out and die. As if that's what happens in America. It doesn't happen that way. And she knows it, and we know it, and everybody knows it. But much, much, much more to the point of this. You're absolutely right, Steve. This was an execution that had to take place because the entire reason that the bureaucrats that run socialist systems are able to stay in power is because of the fig leaf that they present, that we are doing this for your own benefit. In fact, when you get right down to it, the free healthcare is really the free healthcare is really the giant bauble, right? It's the diamond in the tiara of socialism and love for the common people. We're going to provide healthcare to everybody. Okay, well, what we found out from this is we're going to provide our definition of healthcare to pretty much everybody, but we, the bureaucrats, will decide what that is. We, the bureaucrats, will decide when it's cost effective. We, the bureaucrats, will decide when it's going to work and not. So now we come to the salient point here. If it wasn't clear, Scott mentioned that the doctor saw Charlie and said there's nothing he can do for him, but he said that there's nothing I can do for him now. If we had come, if I had been able to treat this child at the beginning, we might have had a 10% chance. If you are lined up against a wall and somebody says you've got a 10% chance of avoiding this execution, do you want it? What would you say? What would you say if it was a 1% chance? What would you say if it was 1,000 to 1? What would you say? We know what you would say. And so the entire point here is, why did the state not allow this child to be treated at no cost to itself, at no burden to itself? Why, in fact, did they imprison this baby in the British Isles and make it absolutely certain that he was not going to escape to what almost certainly would have been his death anyway? Why? Because this case is the exact reason why people turned out in the streets to protest single-payer health care in the form of Obamacare in this country. This is the entire reason that people fight against socialism. The reason Steve is here and Scott is here and I am here can be reduced to this one case, namely, I don't want somebody telling me I cannot take a chance to save the life of my child because it offends their political beliefs. And that's exactly what the existence of this case does. It offends their political beliefs. It offends their beliefs. And it trumpets to everybody in Great Britain and Europe and all around the world the fact that we control your life or death, not you. And there are no emergency parachutes, and there are no escape plans, and there are no fire ladders. No, none of this is going to come and rescue you. When we decide that you're going to die, you're going to die. This is the deal. You wanted it for free. Congratulations. You got it for free. Now we're going to tell you when you live or die, and no one else gets to make that decision. Because if Charlie had been allowed to leave the country, it would have been an admission of something that would have been the end of the national healthcare system and the end of socialism. Namely, that this system works on a cost-effective, cost-benefit basis. There is no competition. You are stuck with it. If Charlie had a chance to be treated, and even if he died, it is a signal to the rest of the people living under these single-payer healthcare systems that there are, in fact, alternatives to your system, and that you're not actually dead until you die, not when the state says you die. And I will close this by referring to a story I've used a couple times because it happens to be true. I went and did a speech in Canada many years ago when I started speaking. And the guy who invited me up there ran a cancer lab, small cancer lab in Canada. And as a research oncologist, he said I would get regularly, probably once a week, a phone call from people who either I knew or who knew people that I knew, saying pretty much the same thing every time. John, I'm inventing that name, my wife was just diagnosed with terminal cancer, and the state has said it's time for her to take her pain pills and go home and die. Does she have a chance? And he would send the reports, and the guy would look at these reports, and he would say exactly what happened here, Scott. Well, there's an experimental treatment program that's going on at the University of Alabama. It's got a 14% cure rate, but it seems to have some possibility of affecting this particular set of symptoms. And imagine your surprise when you find out that the people who get this news will do anything, including raising $1 million if they have to go and get this program. But the button on all of this, guys, is this. This guy said to me unprompted, he said, in Canada, when the national healthcare system of Canada decides that you're dead, you're dead. But in America, you're not dead until you're in the ground. There's always somebody there who thinks there's a shot. There's always somebody there who's got some kind of hope. And I don't want to live in a society without hope. And I don't want to live in a society where faceless bureaucrats decide that they have to murder a child simply because they don't want to face the embarrassment of the fact that their system, which is what they've touted as the pinnacle of human evolution, is incapable of doing anything for a 1-year-old child in a world full of gratitude and charity that is prepared to give their parents some hope. This is most monstrous. This is why we fight. This is why I'm here. It's why the company's here. It's why you guys are here. We don't want to have to face that situation where some bureaucrat tells us, nope, time to die.
Hey, Scott, let me put the final little cherry on top of this story. We're recording this, midday Tuesday. And as of the last report I'd seen just a few hours ago, the court had still not given the guards permission to take Charlie home to die.
Wow. You know, in the movies,
it's because he's tissue. I'm sorry,
That's right.
I didn't mean to interrupt. That's because because he's medical waste, Steve. You see, he's medical waste. He's already been. We know he's going to die. So why should he be able to die at home? He's just medical waste that needs to be disposed of, like the rest of the medical waste from the hospitals, disposed of daily, all the time in clinics all around America. We all know what we're talking about here.
In the movies, evil thunders in on Godzilla's claws, or appears in a black cape with, an ominous sound of brass and bass and drums and a black mask and labored breathing. In real life, evil comes in on the carpet, padding in on cat's paws. It comes in almost amiably. I mean, I have no doubt that the staff at the British hospital, that I'm not going to name directly, that the staff of the National Health Service, that the British court system, that the International Human Rights Tribunal of the European Union all believe they did the best thing for Charlie Gard and ultimately for his parents as well. They truly wanted to end his suffering. They believed that the only way to do that was to allow him to die without any crazy heroic efforts to save him. In addition, I also don't doubt that there are some Republicans stateside over here that are employing emotional manipulation by linking Charlie's plight to the consequences of giving government too much control of the healthcare system. However, this is not a story about partisan politics. It's not even a story about big government. It's a story of parents who love their child and who would eagerly sacrifice their own lives to save his. In other words, it's a story about you, about any parents. These are two people whom God grants the stewardship of a child. The mother and the father, these are the only two people. And as long as they are able to do so, as long as they draw breath, no one can seize that right from them. It is a natural, if you prefer non-theologically, but a God-given right. And for better or worse, they must exercise the stewardship that they've received to the best of their abilities. And this is because besides the Lord himself, there is no one more interested. There is no one who cares more. There is no one who loves more than a parent does, than a parent's love for a child. Regardless of what 1,000 well-meaning and compassionate professionals and bureaucrats may believe, a parent's attempt to preserve the life of his child must be sustained and maintained inviolate if we are to continue a civilization. Government and professionals must step aside and defer to those whom God appointed. They must defer to greater love. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and the team here at Right Angle, BillWhittle.com, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.